Look, I've been a xenobiologist for the Galactic Council for about 47 cycles now, and I've seen some truly bizarre stuff. I've watched Glortnax traders negotiate deals using interpretive dance. I've observed Zephian philosophers debate the meaning of existence for 3 weeks straight without blinking because, well, they don't have eyelids. I've even witnessed a Krell warrior cry at a particularly emotional commercial about insurance policies. But nothing, and I mean absolutely nothing, prepared me for the day I met Marcus Chen and watched the entire food chain of Predator Station 7 collectively lose its mind. Let me set the scene for you. Predator Station 7. Catchy name, right? Some bureaucrat probably got a bonus for that creative masterpiece. It's basically a massive space station orbiting a gas giant in the Theta Serpentis system, and it serves as a diplomatic hub for species that the Council has diplomatically labeled as aggressive carnivores, which is a polite way of saying, these folks will absolutely eat your face if you look at them wrong during negotiations. We're talking about the Vrakthor, 7-foot-tall reptilian nightmares with teeth like serrated combat knives. The Shrike Collective, insectoid hunters with reflexes so fast they can literally catch plasma bolts mid-flight. The Kralix Empire, feline predators who consider a successful hunt to be the highest form of art. And about 17 other species that make your average horror movie monster look like a cuddly stuffed toy. Oh, and then there were humans. Specifically, one human. Marcus Chen. Now, humans had been part of the Galactic Council for maybe 20 cycles at this point, and most species still couldn't figure them out. See, humans didn't fit into any neat category. They weren't pure predators like the Vrakthor. They weren't pure prey like the Fluffkin. They were these weird, omnivorous persistence hunters who somehow climbed their way to the top of their planet's food chain through sheer stubborn refusal to die, and an unsettling talent for making things explode. The Council's official stance on humans was basically a very long document that translated to, be polite, and maybe they won't notice that we're terrified. Marcus worked as a maintenance engineer on Predator Station 7. Yes, maintenance. They sent a human to do maintenance work on a station full of species that considered violence a valid greeting. The Council's HR department claimed it was about fostering interspecies cooperation and building bridges. Those of us with functioning brain matter knew it was because humans were apparently the only species crazy enough to take the job. I was stationed there for a research assignment, studying pack dynamics among mixed predator populations. Fascinating stuff if you enjoy living in a constant state of mild terror. The station had a careful social hierarchy. The Vrakthor were generally at the top because, frankly, have you seen teeth? The Shrike Collective commanded respect through their hunting prowess. Everyone else sorted themselves out through a complex system of challenges, posturing, and the occasional accidental death that everyone politely pretended not to notice. Marcus? Marcus seemed to exist outside this hierarchy entirely. He'd walk through the station with his toolkit, whistling these bizarre human melodies, and predators would just move out of his way, not out of respect, not out of fear. They moved with this confused uncertainty, like they'd encountered a creature that their instincts couldn't quite categorize. Is it prey? Their ancient predator brains seemed to ask. It's small and soft and has no natural weapons. But it doesn't smell like prey, their instincts would respond. It smells like something else. That something else was probably the scent of someone who descended from a species that once threw pointy sticks at mammoths and thought that was a perfectly reasonable thing to do. Anyway, the incident happened on what the station called Day 247 of the current cycle. I was in one of the observation lounges, trying to enjoy a hot beverage that tasted like burnt rubber mixed with disappointment, which is what passed for coffee in most of the galaxy. Marcus came walking through, carrying a crate of thermal regulators, when we all heard it. A sound. Now, you have to understand, Predator Station 7 was not a quiet place. There were roars, snarls, the occasional scream when someone lost a dominance challenge, and the constant hum of life support systems. But this sound cut through all of that. It was a cry. High-pitched, desperate, terrified. The kind of sound that evolution has hardwired into most species' brains as baby in distress. Every single predator in the observation lounge froze. And I mean froze. A Vrakthor warrior with a confirmed kill count of 47 sentients in ritual combat stopped mid-conversation. A Shrike hunter who'd been sharpening her mandibles went completely still. Even Krath the Destroyer, a Kralix whose name was apparently legally changed to include the Destroyer, looked up from his meal. Marcus dropped his crate. The thermal regulators scattered across the deck with a clatter that nobody noticed. He was already moving toward the sound. "Chen, wait," I called out, because I'm apparently an idiot who thinks humans listen to reason. "The maintenance corridors aren't safe. There are." But he was gone, jogging toward the lower decks where the sound had come from. And here's the weird part. Everyone else started following him. The Vrakthor, the Shrike, Krath the Destroyer, even Srethix, a Varanian serpent who usually couldn't be bothered to move unless there was food or a fight involved. We found Marcus 3 levels down, in one of the maintenance ducts that honeycombed the station's infrastructure. He was kneeling next to something small and scaled. And when I got close enough to see what it was, I felt my digestive system attempt to evacuate through my respiratory system. It was a Vrakthor hatchling. Now, Vrakthor hatchlings are rare on the station. The species has complex breeding protocols and usually raises their young on colony worlds, not on diplomatic stations. This little thing couldn't have been more than a few days old. Its scales were still soft, not yet hardened into the armor plating that adult Vrakthor sported. It was about the size of a human forearm, with oversized eyes and tiny teeth that would eventually grow into those terrifying serrated nightmares. And it was alone. The hatchling was crying out in that desperate way that baby creatures do when they're scared and hungry and don't understand why the world is suddenly cold and empty. Its coloring was wrong too, pale and grayish instead of the healthy green of a properly nourished hatchling. "Where's the parent?" One of the Shrike hunters clicked, her voice processors translating the question into something the rest of us could understand. Nobody answered, but we all knew. Somewhere on this station, a Vrakthor parent was dead. Maybe from a duel gone wrong. Maybe from an accident in one of the more dangerous sections. Maybe from something else entirely. The station logged deaths regularly enough that they'd implemented an automated system for it. Protocol in this situation was clear. Contact Vrakthor authorities, have them retrieve the hatchling, file the appropriate reports, move on with your life. The hatchling would be taken to a colony world and integrated into a new family unit. Standard procedure, clean, efficient, very civilized. Marcus Chen, however, apparently didn't read the protocol manual. Or he read it and used it for kindling. Hard to say with humans. He reached out and gently scooped the hatchling into his arms. The crowd of predators that had followed him made a collective sound that I can only describe as a cross between a gasp and a growl. You don't touch another species' offspring without permission. You especially don't touch a Vrakthor hatchling if you value having all your limbs attached to your body. Easy there, little one. Marcus said softly, cradling the creature against his chest. The hatchling's cries immediately quieted to confused chirps. "You're okay. You're safe now." Krath the Destroyer took a step forward. His feline features twisted into what might have been concern or might have been the prelude to violence. "Human, you should not. This baby is starving," Marcus interrupted, and his voice had an edge to it that I'd never heard before. "Look at the color. Look at the scale texture. When did it last eat?" The Kralix warrior stopped, his predatory instincts apparently overriding his diplomatic training. He looked at the hatchling more carefully. "Yesterday, perhaps the day before." "Too long," Marcus said flatly. He was already moving back toward the main levels, still holding the hatchling. "Way too long for something this young. Where's the nearest nutrition station?" "You cannot feed it standard rations," a Vrakthor warrior rumbled, finally pushing through the crowd. His name was Grixthal, and he was one of the senior diplomats. His eyes were fixed on the hatchling with an intensity that made my survival instincts scream. Hatchlings require specific nutrients, specific preparation. The food must be partially digested, warmed to the correct temperature, delivered in the proper manner. "So tell me how to do it," Marcus said simply. The crowd went quiet, like scary quiet. The kind of quiet that happens right before something either very good or very bad occurs. "You wish to feed it?" Grixthal asked slowly, as if he suspected the translation software was malfunctioning. "I wish to keep it from dying," Marcus replied, and there was that edge in his voice again. "Tell me what it needs." What followed was the single most surreal hour of my entire career. Grixthal, a Vrakthor warrior who'd commanded fleets in the Spinward campaigns and who'd personally killed 17 opponents in ritual combat, gave Marcus Chen detailed instructions on how to prepare and feed a Vrakthor hatchling. Marcus listened, took notes on his datapad, asked questions, clarified details. The whole time, he kept the hatchling tucked against his chest, and the little creature had stopped crying entirely. It just sat there, chirping occasionally, looking up at Marcus with those oversized eyes. They went to the station's specialized nutrition center, a facility that could synthesize food for about 300 different species' dietary requirements. Marcus input the specifications Grixthal provided, added some modifications based on what he called basic infant care principles, and produced something that looked like a bowl of lukewarm meat paste. "That is incorrect," Grixthal said immediately. "The temperature is too low. The consistency is wrong. The hatchling will reject it." Marcus didn't argue. He adjusted the temperature, modified the consistency, tried again. 4 attempts later, he had something that Grixthal grudgingly approved. Then came the actual feeding process, which apparently involved careful positioning and specific techniques, and about 17 other factors that could result in the hatchling choking or rejecting the food, or just generally dying in some horrible way. Marcus sat down on the floor, right there in the nutrition center, with a growing crowd of predators watching him. He positioned the hatchling in his lap, used his fingers to carefully offer the prepared food, and made these soft, encouraging sounds that humans apparently make at small creatures. The hatchling ate. It didn't just eat. It devoured the food with desperate hunger, making satisfied chirping sounds between bites. When the bowl was empty, it curled up in Marcus's lap and made a sound that Grixthal later told me translated roughly to "content full belly sleep safe." "The hatchling has imprinted on you," Grixthal said quietly, and there was something in his voice I couldn't quite identify. "It thinks you are its parent now." Marcus looked down at the sleeping hatchling, then up at the Vrakthor diplomat. I'm not. I'm just the guy who fed it. Once your people arrive to take it to a proper family? You do not understand, Grixthal interrupted. Vrakthor hatchlings imprint during their first feeding after separation from a parent. It is an evolutionary survival mechanism. This hatchling will now reject food from anyone else. It will accept only you. The silence that followed that statement was the kind of silence that has weight to it. Physical presence. The kind of silence that makes you want to check if reality has stopped working. That seems like a design flaw, Marcus finally said. It is not a flaw, another Vrakthor voice said. This one belonged to Krethar, one of the matriarchs who'd been standing at the back of the crowd. She stepped forward, her scales bearing the ceremonial markings of her rank. It is survival. A hatchling separated from its clutch is unlikely to survive in the wild. Better to bond immediately with any adult willing to provide care than to die searching for an ideal parent. Marcus looked at the sleeping hatchling, then at the crowd of predators, then back at the hatchling. I could actually see the moment when the reality of the situation hit him. How long does the imprint last? He asked carefully. Until maturity, Krethar replied. Approximately 8 to 10 cycles. That's years. Yes. Marcus sat there for a long moment, processing. The hatchling shifted in his sleep, making a tiny, contented sound. Finally, Marcus looked up at Grixthal and said, with the kind of calm acceptance that humans apparently reserved for completely insane situations. Okay. So I guess I need to learn how to raise a Vrakthor hatchling. Where do I start? The diplomatic incident that followed was legendary. The Galactic Council had to convene emergency sessions. There were arguments about cross-species adoption, about precedent, about proper protocols, about 17 other bureaucratic concerns that nobody actually cared about. The Vrakthor delegation was split. Some argued that a human couldn't possibly raise a Vrakthor properly. Others, led by Krethar, pointed out that the alternative was letting the hatchling die, which violated about 12 different Vrakthor codes of honor. In the end, the decision came down to Vrakthor law, which stated that any adult who fed a bonded hatchling was responsible for its care until another suitable guardian could be identified and accepted by the hatchling. Since the hatchling rejected every other potential guardian, Marcus was legally stuck with him. Marcus named the hatchling Pip, because apparently humans have this compulsion to give cute nicknames to things that will eventually grow up to be apex predators. The changes to Predator Station 7 started slowly, and then accelerated like a ship dropping out of FTL. Marcus had to move to larger quarters to accommodate a growing Vrakthor hatchling. He had to learn Vrakthor feeding schedules, socialization requirements, and about 1 million other things that came with raising a species known for their martial prowess and aggressive tendencies. But here's what actually happened. Every single predator species on the station started helping him. Grixthal provided daily instruction on Vrakthor cultural practices. Krethar sent detailed nutritional plans and modified them as Pip grew. The Shrike Collective, those terrifying insectoid hunters, started teaching Pip proper stalking techniques when he was old enough to practice. Krath the Destroyer personally oversaw Pip's early combat training, ensuring the hatchling learned proper form. The station's social hierarchy didn't just shift. It completely restructured itself around this weird little family unit. Marcus became something that the predator species didn't have a proper word for in their languages. The closest translation was Pack Father Who Protects. And Pip? Pip grew up thinking that humans were just another type of Vrakthor. A small, soft type that made up for their lack of claws and teeth with an absolutely terrifying combination of problem-solving skills and stubborn determination. I watched Pip's development over the cycles. By the time he was 2 cycles old, he was already the size of a large dog, with scales that had hardened into proper armor plating. His teeth had grown in sharp and deadly. His claws could tear through standard hull plating. He was, by any objective measure, a developing apex predator. He was also completely devoted to Marcus Chen. The first time someone threatened Marcus, Pip was 3 cycles old and roughly the size of an adult human. A Krellix merchant, drunk on some kind of fermented plant matter, took offense to something Marcus said about improper waste disposal. The merchant made the mistake of raising a clawed hand toward Marcus. Pip moved so fast that station sensors didn't catch the initial motion. One moment, the merchant was standing. The next moment, Pip had him pinned to the deck with claws at his throat, making a sound that I can only describe as a death growl mixed with a protective parent's warning. "Pip, down," Marcus said calmly. "He's just drunk. He didn't mean it." Pip didn't move. The growl intensified. "Pip, look at me." Marcus waited until the young Vrakthor's eyes focused on him. "It's okay. I'm safe. Let him go." Pip held position for another 3 seconds, which is an eternity when you've got Vrakthor claws at your throat. Then he slowly backed off, positioning himself between Marcus and the terrified merchant. The merchant scrambled away, babbling apologies. The crowd that had gathered was completely silent. "Anyone else want to discuss waste disposal procedures?" Marcus asked the crowd cheerfully. Nobody did. Word spread fast. Within a cycle, every species on Predator Station 7 knew about the human who'd adopted a Orphaned Hatchling and was now protected by what was rapidly becoming one of the station's most formidable young predators. But the story that spread through the wider Galactic Council was different. It wasn't about Marcus adopting Pip. It was about what happened at the station's Festival of the Hunt. The Festival of the Hunt was an annual event where the predator species engaged in various competitions, hunting simulations, combat trials, tracking challenges, all designed to let them show off their skills in a controlled environment that didn't result in actual deaths. Usually, station security always took extra shifts during the festival. Pip was 5 cycles old by this point, nearly adult-sized and terrifyingly competent. Marcus had entered him in several of the youth competitions, partly because Vrakthor culture demanded it, and partly because, as Marcus put it, the kid's got to burn off energy somehow. Pip dominated. Not just one, dominated. He took first place in the tracking competition, the stealth hunt, and the combat trials for his age group. The older Vrakthor warriors watched with approval, already marking him as a future leader. Then came the championship hunt. The championship hunt was the festival's main event, an elaborate simulation where participants hunted a holographic creature through a complex environment. The creature was programmed with advanced AI and defensive capabilities. Taking it down required skill, strategy, and usually a coordinated team effort. The champion for the past 6 cycles had been Krath the Destroyer, because of course it had. The Krellix warrior was a legend, and he approached the championship hunt with the same intensity he brought to everything else. That year, something went wrong with the simulation. The AI malfunctioned, causing the holographic creature to behave erratically and dangerously. One of its defensive strikes hit a power conduit, causing a real explosion that sent shrapnel through the simulation chamber. Marcus had been watching from the observation deck. He saw the explosion, saw Krath go down, wounded by shrapnel, saw the AI-controlled creature, its protocols now completely scrambled, moving in for what would have been a simulated killing blow that, due to the malfunction, might have been an actual killing blow. Marcus didn't think. He just moved. Slapped the emergency release on the observation deck door and dropped into the simulation chamber, landing hard enough that I definitely heard something in his leg crack. "Pip! Hunt!" he shouted. Pip was already moving. The young Vrakthor had been competing in a different arena, but apparently heard Marcus's voice through the station's communication system. He came through a wall, literally through it, tearing through the weakened section where the explosion had occurred. What followed was about 45 seconds of the most impressive hunting behavior I've ever witnessed. Pippi didn't just attack the malfunctioning AI creature. He analyzed it, identified its weak points, and took it apart with surgical precision. The creature went down, its holographic form flickering and dying. Then Pip positioned himself between the downed Krath and any potential threats, making the same protective growl he'd made cycles ago when defending Marcus. Marcus limped over to Krath, ignoring his own clearly broken leg, and started administering first aid. Station Medical was already on their way, but Marcus's quick intervention probably saved Krath's life. The incident was reviewed by station authorities and the festival organizers. Multiple safety protocols were updated. A formal apology was issued. Everything very proper and bureaucratic. But what happened next wasn't bureaucratic at all. 3 days after the incident, Krath the Destroyer requested a formal meeting in the station's main assembly hall. Everyone showed up, because when someone named the Destroyer asks for a formal meeting, you attend. Krath stood at the center of the hall, his wounds bandaged but his posture strong. Marcus was there too, his leg in a medical brace, with Pip sitting beside him. "I am Krath, of the Kralix Empire," the warrior began, using the formal declaration format. "I am a hunter. I am a warrior. I have killed 17 opponents in honorable combat. I have led successful hunts on 43 worlds. I have earned my name through blood and victory." The hall was silent. This was clearly building to something. "I was prepared to die in that arena," Krath continued. "I had failed in the hunt. I had fallen to my prey. By the laws of the hunt, death would have been appropriate." He turned to look directly at Marcus and Pip. But Marcus Chen, who is not a warrior of the Kralix, who is not bound by our laws or traditions, chose to preserve my life instead of allowing the hunt to conclude. And his packmate, the Vrakthor called Pip, demonstrated skill and honor in protecting both his pack father and a fallen warrior. Krath reached up and removed the ceremonial medallion he wore, the mark of his championship standing. Then he did something that made the entire gathered crowd of predators make shocked sounds in about 40 different languages. He bowed. Not a small nod. Not a gesture of acknowledgement. A full, formal bow, the kind that Kralix warriors reserved for their clan leaders and the most honored dead. "I acknowledge life debt to Marcus Chen and his packmate," Krath declared. "I acknowledge honor debt to their actions. I acknowledge them as worthy of respect among all predator species." Then every single Vrakthor in the hall bowed, followed by the Shrike Collective, followed by every other predator species present. The entire apex predator population of Predator Station 7, species that considered themselves the galaxy's finest warriors and hunters, bowed to a human maintenance engineer and his adopted Vrakthor son. Marcus, for his part, looked extremely uncomfortable with the whole situation. You really don't need to." "Silence, human," Grixthal said, but his voice was gentle. "You have earned this. Accept it with grace." Marcus shut up. Beside him, Pip made a confused chirping sound, clearly not understanding why everyone was bowing, but pleased that they seemed to respect his human. The incident became legend. not just on the station, but throughout the Galactic Council. The story spread and grew with each telling. Some versions had Marcus fighting off a dozen malfunctioning AI creatures single-handedly. Some had Pip taking down a real monster. Some combined both and added explosions. But the core truth remained. A human had fed an orphaned hatchling, and the predators of the galaxy had recognized something in that act. Something that transcended species or biology or evolutionary strategy. They recognized the willingness to protect someone vulnerable, to care for someone who couldn't care for themselves, to sacrifice comfort and safety for another's survival. In the complex hierarchy of predator species, where strength and hunting prowess determined standing, Marcus Chen had proven something more fundamental: that the strongest predators aren't always the ones with the biggest teeth or the sharpest claws. Sometimes they're the ones who'll drop into a dangerous situation to save a life, even when their leg breaks on the landing. Sometimes they're the ones who'll spend cycles learning a foreign species' child-rearing practices because a baby needed feeding. Sometimes they're the maintenance engineer who just wanted to fix the thermal regulators and ended up teaching the galaxy's apex predators what it really means to be strong. Pip reached maturity at the end of his 8th cycle. By Vrakthor law, he was now an adult with full rights and responsibilities. He could choose to join a traditional Vrakthor family unit if he wanted. He could leave Marcus and pursue his own path. He chose to stay. "You're my father," Pip told Marcus, using the Vrakthor term that means parent who provides and protects. His voice was deep now, no longer the chirps of a hatchling. "Biology doesn't change that. You fed me when I was starving. You taught me how to live. You showed me what it means to be honorable. Why would I leave?" Marcus didn't cry. Humans apparently don't cry in front of warriors, something about maintaining composure or dignity or some other concept that seemed ridiculous given the circumstances. But his voice was definitely rough when he said, "Proud of you, kid. So damn proud." They still live on Predator Station 7. Marcus still does maintenance work, though he's been promoted several times and now oversees the entire engineering department. Pip serves as a diplomatic liaison between the Vrakthor delegation and other species, leveraging his unique upbringing to bridge gaps that other diplomats struggle with. And every new predator species that arrives at the station learns the same lesson within their first day. You can challenge anyone you want. Test yourself against any warrior. Prove your strength however you see fit. But if you threaten Marcus Chen or his son, you'll discover exactly why humanity climbed to the top of their planet's food chain through pure stubborn refusal to accept that they were prey. You'll discover that humans don't need claws or teeth or scales. They have something far more dangerous: the absolute, unwavering certainty that when someone they care about is threatened, backing down simply isn't an option. And you'll learn that lesson right before Pip introduces you to exactly how terrifying an apex predator can be when protecting family. The funny thing is, Marcus still insists he's not special. He still claims he was just doing what anyone would do. He still acts like feeding a starving hatchling was the most normal thing in the galaxy, not an act that fundamentally changed how the predator species viewed humanity. Maybe that's the most human thing about the whole story. They do something extraordinary and then act confused when everyone makes a big deal about it. Or maybe, just maybe, to humans, it really isn't extraordinary. Maybe they're so used to caring for creatures that aren't their own species, so accustomed to helping those who can't help themselves, that they genuinely don't understand why the rest of us think it's remarkable. Which, when you think about it, might be the most terrifying thing about humans. Not that they'll drop into a dangerous situation to save someone, but that they'll do it and genuinely not understand why you're surprised. Those crazy, wonderful, absolutely insane pack-bonding apex predators. The galaxy's better for having them, even if they do insist on adopting everything that looks remotely helpless. Especially if they adopt everything that looks remotely helpless. Because sometimes, the strongest bonds aren't formed through shows of strength. Sometimes they're formed through a simple act of feeding a hungry baby who just needed someone to care. And sometimes, that's enough to make even the most fearsome predators in the galaxy bow in acknowledgement, not of strength, but of something far more powerful. Compassion, backed by the absolute refusal to let those you protect come to harm. That's humanity for you. Crazy, compassionate, and completely unaware of how extraordinary they really are. And the galaxy's apex predators? They learn to respect that. Every single one.